I never thought a quiet summer on the farm would turn into the kind of story I'm about to share. Back then, I believed life in the countryside was predictable. The sunrise always came too early, the cows always needed feeding, and the smell of fresh-cut hay drifted across the fields in the evenings. Nothing really changed. At least, that's what I thought, until the summer farmhand arrived. His name was Jacob. He was 24, maybe 25, a year or two older than me. He came from a town about 30 miles away, but the way people spoke about him, you'd think he was some kind of celebrity. Strong as an ox, the local feed store owner told me. Knows how to handle any kind of machine, another neighbor said. By the time Jacob stepped out of his dusty pickup, I already felt like I was meeting someone important. He wasn't what I expected, though. He had this easy charm, suntan skin, a crooked smile that seemed to disarm everyone, and a way of looking you directly in the eye when he spoke. Within minutes of his arrival, he had my boss, Mr. Harris, laughing like they'd known each other for years. And Mrs. Harris? Well, I noticed the way she looked at him too. Not the way you look at a worker you just hired, but something softer, almost curious. I tried not to think much of it. People in small towns talk, and I knew better than to feed the rumor mill. My job was simple. Keep my head down, work hard, and maybe save enough money to finally move out of my parents' place. But Jacob's presence changed the rhythm of the farm almost overnight. The first week, everything seemed normal enough. Jacob worked hard, harder than anyone I'd ever seen. He could lift hay bales 2 at a time, fix a tractor in the blazing sun without breaking a sweat, and still have energy left to play with the farm dogs afterwards. Everyone respected him, even admired him, including me. But then the small things started. It was late one evening, and I had stayed behind in the barn to finish stacking feed. The sun had already dipped below the horizon, and the only light came from a lantern hanging on a nail. I heard footsteps on the gravel outside and assumed it was Mr. Harris. But when the door creaked open, it was Jacob, and right behind him, Mrs. Harris. I froze, half hidden behind a stack of hay bales. They didn't notice me. Jacob lit another lantern, and the barn glowed with a warm, dim light. They spoke in low voices, nothing too strange at first, just about chores, the animals, the heat. But the way she laughed at something he said, the way she touched his arm for just a second too long, it didn't sit right. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. But the next morning, I couldn't shake the image from my mind. Every time Mrs. Harris brought lemonade out to the workers in the field, I noticed her lingering by Jacob just a little longer. Every time Jacob cracked a joke, her laugh rang a little too brightly. And Mr. Harris? Well, he noticed nothing. He trusted both of them completely. I told myself it was none of my business. But the more I saw, the harder it became to ignore. One Saturday afternoon, the whole crew was out repairing a section of fence that had collapsed during a storm. I went back to the barn to grab more tools, and there they were again, Jacob and Mrs. Harris standing far too close, their voices hushed and their expressions guilty when they realized I had walked in. Jacob gave me that crooked smile as if nothing had happened. Mrs. Harris quickly handed me a hammer and muttered something about checking the feed bins. That was the first time I felt truly caught in the middle of something I didn't want to be part of. I wasn't just imagining it anymore. Something was happening, and I was the only one who saw it. And that, I guess, was the moment when a quiet summer began turning into a storm I couldn't escape.
For the next couple of weeks, I tried to push the whole thing out of my mind. I told myself I had work to do, long, exhausting days that started before dawn and ended when the cicadas screamed in the dark. There wasn't any room in my head for imagining things. But the problem was, I wasn't imagining them anymore. It wasn't just stolen glances or laughter that lasted too long. It was the silences. The moments when Jacob and Mrs. Harris disappeared at the same time. The excuses she made for checking on the barn late at night. The way Jacob always seemed to be nearby whenever she went into town. And the worst part? Mr. Harris still saw nothing. He was a good man, hard-working, patient, the kind of farmer who could spend an entire day fixing an irrigation pump and then sit down at the dinner table with a smile. He trusted people, maybe too much. And I found myself getting angry, not at him, but at the unfairness of it all. How could he not see what was happening under his own roof? One night, I stayed up later than usual. The air was thick and hot, and I couldn't sleep. From my window in the bunkhouse, I saw shadows moving near the barn. Curiosity gnawed at me until I finally grabbed a flashlight and crept outside. The barn door was cracked open, lantern light spilling through the gap. I stepped closer, heart hammering, and heard voices, hers and Jacob's. They weren't whispering anymore. "I can't keep sneaking around like this," Mrs. Harris said. Her voice trembled, a mix of fear and longing. Jacob's reply came firm, steady. "You don't have to. You deserve better than this life. You deserve someone who sees you." I froze, the words cutting through me like a blade. It wasn't just a fling. It wasn't just stolen moments of temptation. They were falling for each other. I backed away before they could notice me, but sleep never came that night. I kept hearing her voice, his words. I kept imagining what would happen if Mr. Harris found out. The farm was no longer the same place. Every chore became heavier with the weight of that secret. I avoided both of them when I could, but small farms don't give much room to hide. One afternoon, while repairing a tractor tire with Jacob, he suddenly turned to me. "You're quiet these days," he said casually, wiping grease from his hands. "Everything all right?" I swallowed hard, avoiding his gaze. "Just tired." But he didn't buy it. His eyes lingered at me, sharp and calculating, as if he knew I'd seen too much. That look, it was the first time I realized Jacob wasn't just charming. He was dangerous in a way I couldn't quite name. Days passed and the tension only grew. Mrs. Harris seemed more distracted, often staring out across the fields when she thought no one was watching. Mr. Harris carried on, oblivious, humming old country songs as he worked. And me? I was stuck in the middle, suffocating with the truth. The breaking point came one sweltering evening in July. The heat had been relentless all week, the kind that made tempers short and nerves fray. We had just finished stacking hay bales when Mr. Harris asked me to grab some ledgers from the house. I walked in through the back door, the kitchen empty, and heard muffled voices upstairs. My stomach dropped. I knew that sound now, voices trying not to be heard. Step by step, I climbed the staircase. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure they would hear it. At the end of the hall, the bedroom door was ajar. I didn't want to look. God knows I didn't. But my eyes betrayed me. Through the crack, I saw them. Jacob and Mrs. Harris, closer than they'd ever dared before. It wasn't just a secret stolen in the barn or behind the cornfield. It was happening right there in the very house Mr. Harris had built with his hands. I stumbled back down the stairs, nearly tripping in my haste. I didn't take the ledgers. I didn't care. I just needed to breathe. Out in the yard, I sat on the steps of the porch, staring at the horizon where the sun was bleeding red into the fields. My mind was chaos. Should I tell Mr. Harris? Would he even believe me? Or would Jacob twist it, make it seem like I was lying out of jealousy? Because that was the truth I hadn't admitted to myself until that moment. I was jealous. Not of Mrs. Harris, not exactly, but of the way Jacob commanded everything without trying. The way he walked into this farm, into this family, and took a place that wasn't his. By the time they came downstairs, I was gone. I spent the night walking the edge of the fields, listening to the rustle of the corn and the croak of frogs by the creek, trying to figure out what to do. The farm felt like it was suffocating me. Every day the secret grew heavier. Every smile from Mr. Harris cut deeper. I couldn't carry it much longer. Something was going to break, whether I wanted it to or not. And deep down, I knew the moment of reckoning was closer than any of us realized.
The breaking point came faster than I expected. It was a Saturday evening, the kind when the air feels heavy with something you can't quite name. Mr. Harris had driven into town for supplies, leaving Jacob, Mrs. Harris, and me to finish up the chores. I tried to stay outside, pitching hay to the cattle, but when I came back toward the barn, I heard voices again, louder this time, desperate. I stopped just outside the door. "I can't keep living a lie," Mrs. Harris said, her voice sharp, trembling. "If he finds out..." Jacob cut her off. Then let him. He doesn't deserve you. You're mine, and you know it. The words struck me like lightning. There it was, plain and undeniable. Not a fling, not a mistake. He was trying to take her away completely. Before I could think better of it, I pushed the door open. They spun toward me, Jacob's eyes flashing with anger, hers wide with fear. For a moment, none of us spoke. The barn was thick with heat and tension, the air buzzing like a storm waiting to break. "You've gone too far," I finally said, my voice shaking but steady enough. "He trusts you, both of you, and this is how you repay him?" Mrs. Harris's face flushed and she opened her mouth to speak, but Jacob stepped forward, towering over me. His smile was gone, replaced with something colder. "You should keep your mouth shut," he said, low and dangerous. "This isn't your business." But it was. God help me, it was. I stood my ground. "It became my business the moment you dragged me into your secret. I can't keep pretending I don't see it." For a second, I thought he might hit me. His fists clenched, his jaw tightened, and the air between us was electric. Then Mrs. Harris grabs his arm, pulling him back. "Stop," she whispered, "please." The sound of gravel crunching outside froze us all. Mr. Harris's truck. He was back. Panic flashed in Mrs. Harris's eyes, and Jacob cursed under his breath. I felt my stomach drop. In seconds, the lie that had been building all summer was about to collide with the truth. Mr. Harris walked in, carrying a sack of feed over his shoulder. He smiled when he saw us, wiping sweat from his brow. "What's going on in here?" Silence. None of us could answer. The barn seemed to close in around us. Finally, I spoke. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "You need to know, sir. They've been..." But I didn't finish. Jacob lunged at me, shoving me hard against the wall. The lantern rattled, shadows jerking across the wooden beams. "Shut up!" he barked. Mr. Harris dropped the sack and stared, confusion turning slowly into horror. "Jacob, what the hell is this?" Mrs. Harris broke then. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I'm sorry." The silence that followed was the loudest I'd ever heard. Mr. Harris's face went pale. He looked at Jacob, then at his wife, and for the first time in my life, I saw a man's heart break right in front of me. His hands shook, his jaw tightened, but his voice came out steady. "Get out," he said. First to Jacob, then to her. "Both of you, get out of my sight." Jacob tried to protest, but the weight of Mr. Harris's rage was too much. He grabbed his jacket, muttering curses, and stormed out. Mrs. Harris lingered for a moment, her hand reaching toward her husband, but he turned away. She followed Jacob into the night. And just like that, the farm was silent again. I stood there, breathing hard, unsure what to do. Mr. Harris sank onto a hay bale, staring at the ground like the world had ended. I wanted to say something, anything, but no words seemed enough. Finally, he spoke, his voice hoarse. "Thank you for telling me. I don't blame you, but I wish..." He shook his head. "I wish I'd never had to hear it." I nodded, my chest tight. There was nothing else to say. The days that followed felt hollow. The farm kept running. Animals don't care about heartbreak. But everything was different. Mrs. Harris never came back. Jacob left town, his name cursed in whispers at the feed store. And Mr. Harris, he worked harder than ever, but his smile was gone. As for me, I finished out the summer, but when August ended, I packed my bags. The farm had given me more than I had bargained for, a lesson about secrets, about loyalty, about how fragile trust can be. Sometimes when I think back on that summer, I still hear the creak of the barn door, still see the look in Mr. Harris's eyes when the truth finally shattered his world. And I know one thing for certain. Some storms don't pass. they stay with you forever.
Thanks for watching. Don't miss the next story.